Assalamualaikum and salam sejahtera. Today we will be covering chapter 6, risk and return. I will divide chapter 6 into two parts, whereby the first, second and third in the first part, and CAPM and SML in the second part. Okay, so the first part is risk and return, whereby students should be able to define what is risk and what is return, and how the relationship between the two. The second objective is students should be able to know the differences of risk preferences. There are three types of risk preferences and the two types of risk. And the third one is diversification and the concept of portfolio, and how actually portfolio can reduce rates. And the second part, we will be covering capital asset pricing model and security market line. Okay, the first thing first, what is risk? We know that we always hear about risk. So we want to know risk is a measure of uncertainty surrounding the return that an investment will earn. Okay, when we say uncertainty, it is something that is possibly we get or possibly we not get. So risk includes the possibility of losing some or all of an original investment. So that is risk. So what is investment risk? Investment risk can be defined as the probability or likelihood of occurrence of losses. Ya? Keadaan di mana kerugian itu berlaku relative to the expected return of any particular investment. So when an investor invests in an asset, they actually expect a return. So if let's say they didn't get the return that they expected, that's what we call it as a risk. So stating simply, investment risk is a measure of the level of uncertainty of achieving the return as per expectation of the investor. So, it is the extent of unexpected results to be realized. Okay. For example, I invest in the stock market with the expectation that every year I will get 10%. Okay. But at the end of a year, I only get 8%. So that 2% is the risk that actually I take by investing in this particular investment. Okay, now that we know risk, we also want to know what is return. Return is simply means profit gain from an investment. Yeah? How much actually we will get return if we invest in certain asset. So, investment return is defined as the financial results of an investment. It consists of periodic cash payment, whether it's yearly or it's quarterly or it's monthly. It depends on the certain assets, and as well as the capital gains. How much actually we get uh, uh, from the investment that we put in. For example, I invest 1,000 this year. Okay, at the end of the year, I get 10%. So at the end of the year, I will get 1,100 from my earlier investment. So this is what we say as the return. Okay, the periodic cash payment may be in the form of dividends, interest, as well as rents. So, expected return, on the other hand, is the return of an asset that expected to generate in the future. Okay, so this is basically the expected return. If at the end of the year, I really get this 10%, so it becomes my return. Early of the year, this is the expected return. Okay, expected return composed of a risk-free rate plus risk premium. I will explain further for these two later. Expected returns are driven by risk in the sense that riskier investments tend to produce higher returns. Okay. Okay, let me move forward. So now the relationship between risk and return. The greater the amount of risk an investor is willing to take, the greater the potential return. So this is the basically the rules that we take if there is higher risk, there's possibly a higher return. Yeah? Although that is not usually happen, but this is the rule that we are commonly used. So risk can come in various ways, and investors need to be compensated for taking additional risk. That's why investment that actually having higher risk, they will provide a higher return because they want to compensate the additional risk. Take for example, US Treasury bond. US Treasury bond is a government bond. Yeah, government bond, which is considered one of the safest investment if compared to corporate bond. Because corporate bond ni is more likely to go bankrupt than the US government. Yeah? So corporate bond giving no treasury bond, because it's safer, it provides a lower rate of return. Yeah? Okay. Because of the default risk of investing in a corporate bond is higher, investors are offered a higher rate of return. Yeah? So basically treasury bond, dia akan duduk kat sini lah. Treasury bond, because it's a government bond. Yeah? And corporate bond will stay here. Okay, so this is a line whereby showing from a lower risk to higher risk, whereby lower risk consists of lower return, and here higher risk consists of higher return. So if we take a look, saving accounts is a low risk investment, and then treasury bond, and then corporate bond, and then stock market. Okay, the second one is risk preferences. Risk preferences is the attitude of taking financial risk by an investor. We can consider ourselves as an investor, where we ourselves have our own preferences of how much risk that we want to take. An individual investor, while making an investment decision, would take risks according to his or her preferences. Okay, so depending upon the risk preference, the investor will classify the risk associated with an investment and thereby find the investment that match his or her preferences. Okay, two major factors that affect the decision of investor. The first one is expected return, and the second one is the risk. So these two, which are which of these two actually investors will look into. Yeah? So risk is measured using beta or standard deviation. There are three types of risk preferences investors. The first one is risk averse, the second one is risk neutral, and the last one is risk seeking investors. So the next slide will explain each one of it. Risk averse investors are those who prefer to take lesser risk investment. Yeah? Holding the expected rate of return fixed. For example, investor A, okay, and investor, oh no, investment, or asset. Asset A, asset B, providing a 10% return each. Okay, but asset A having a beta or a risk of 0.5, while asset B beta of 1.0. Beta is a measure of the degree of risk. So the lesser the beta, the lesser is the risk. So risk is lower, risk is higher. So a risk averse investor, they will look at the lower risk. So they take this one. Okay, risk averse investors not necessarily shy away from risk, but they will choose riskier investment with a higher expected return. Yeah? For example, if we have this scenario, asset A and B giving the same rate of return, risk averse investor will choose asset A because it has lower risk, 0.5. Let's say asset C offer a higher return having the same beta as asset B, but it offers a higher return. Risk averse investor might choose asset C. So risk averse, if the return is the same, they will choose a lesser risk. If the risk is the same, they will choose a higher return, like that. Okay, for risk neutral investors, they don't take risk as their decision. They take return as their main motivation to choose investment. Yeah? Risk neutral investors are the ones who want to invest their money depending on their ideas of gain or loss rather than checking the risk. They will choose investment with higher return regardless of the associated risk. So in this case, risk neutral will choose asset C, because they look at the higher return. And finally, the risk-seeking investors, they prefer investment with greater risk, perhaps even if the investment have lower expected return. Sometimes they may choose investment with low expected returns just for the sake of the thrill of taking extra risk, because they like taking risk. Dia suka ambil risiko, dia suka something yang challenging. So gambling is one of the example of risk-seeking investors. So let's say asset D, we consider gambling, right? The return from 0% into 100%. But the beta is 1.5. Having a highest risk. If this investor is a risk-seeking investor, they will take asset D because they want to take a higher risk in the expectation that they will get a higher return. But they still have the chances of losing all of their money. Okay. So the next one, now that we understand the concept of risk and return, and also the types of the type of risk preferences, we go into diversification, or a concept of holding a portfolio. Okay, many different assets in one investment. Diversification is a risk management strategy that mixes a wide variety of investment within a portfolio. Mix a wide variety of investment. What I say wide variety of investment ni, different kind of investment. Yeah? A diversified portfolio contains a mix of distinct asset. Distinct asset ni different asset. Different asset in an attempt at limiting exposure to any single asset or risk. Diversification is not just holding a lot of asset, but holding a lot of different kinds of asset. Yeah? So if let's say you own a 50 internet stocks, it is not diversified. But if you own 50 stocks that span 20 different industries, which means 50 stocks ni adalah terdiri daripada 20 different industries, then you are diversified. Yeah? So if this picture giving you uh, uh, a different kind of basket that an investor put in their money. Yeah? So it is diversification. So stock Y consists of diversification, while stock X is an independent asset. Okay, one asset. Diversification consists of many different assets. So while diversification, it can reduce the risk, making the graph uh, uh, a bit lower. So this is the measure of risk. Risk, where stock X, the risk is higher. Stock Y, the risk is much lower and giving a better return. The rate of return here. Okay, now we go to the types of risk. There are two types of risk whereby the first one is systematic risk and the second one is unsystematic risk. So we need to know each one of this definition of risk. Yeah? Systematic risk is assets risk associated with market factors that affect all firms. Tak kira lah firms tu firms apa, besar ke kecil ke, industri mana. Yeah? Market risk cannot be eliminated by diversification because it affects all firms. Example of systematic risk is war, inflation, COVID-19, economic recession, etc. etc. Yeah? So if this happen, all firms are being affected and it cannot be eliminated by diversification. Okay. Whereby unsystematic risk is risk associated with single firm or single industry. Yeah? It is unique to a specific company or industry. This is known also as a diversifiable risk. Risiko yang boleh didiversifiedkan dan boleh dikurangkan. So the nature is firm specific, which means it's only involve a certain firms or certain industry only, and it can be eliminated by diversification. Apa contoh-contoh unsystematic risk? Labour strikes. We have seen example of labour strike. If you remember last time, a few years back, a contract doctor in Malaysia, they make a labour strike asking for a raise in salary, also a permanent job. Yeah? So it also affects other companies in overseas. Other than that, lawsuit, company yang terlibat dengan hukuman undang-undang, loss of key accounts, or other examples that only affect certain industry, certain companies. Yeah. So total risk basically a combination of systematic risk and unsystematic risk. So the standard deviation of returns is a measure of total risk. Yeah. For well-diversified portfolio, unsystematic risk is very small because the higher the number of assets, the lower the unsystematic risk will be. Consequently, the total risk of a diversified portfolio is essentially equivalent to systematic risk. Yeah? Kalau portfolio tu very well diversified, unsystematic risk tu dia akan menghampiri kosong, menjadikan total risk tu macam sama dengan systematic risk. Okay, so how do we measure systematic risk? Risk ni kita boleh ukur. Systematic risk ni diukur berdasarkan kepada beta index. Beta ni dia punya simbol dia macam ni. Okay. It measures the sensitivity of a stock's return to changes in returns on the market portfolio. So, kalau beta naik, maksudnya lagi berisiko. Kalau beta nombor dia turun, lagi kurang berisiko. Okay, macam mana dia kira beta for portfolio ni? Dia kira berdasarkan kepada weighted average of the individual stock betas in the portfolio. For example, they have a stock A, B, C, D, and other 20 assets. Total 20 assets bahagi dengan 20. So, average lah. Sebab tu dia panggil weighted average of individual stock betas. Beta untuk A berapa, beta untuk B berapa, campur semua, bahagi dengan 20, dapatlah total beta untuk portfolio tersebut. So, most stocks have beta in the range of 0.5 to 1.5, whereby 0.5 ni less risk, 1.5 is high risk. So, interpretation of beta dia macam ni. Beta larger than 1.0, which means the stock is riskier than average. If it's equal to 1, it has average risk. If it's lesser than 1, the stock is actually less risky than the average. So, if we take a look at the graph, a less risk asset, dia punya graph akan lebih landai macam ni. Yang mana kalau risiko lebih tinggi, dia akan lebih steep. Yang merah ni. Manakala kalau average beta, dia akan berada di tengah-tengah. So, each line of beta ni dia represent adakah aset tersebut tu risiko dia tinggi ke risiko dia rendah. Jadi student should be able to differentiate lah macam mana nak interpret the value of beta. Okay, now we go to diversification and risk reduction. Macam mana sebenarnya dengan holding diversified portfolio, dia boleh mengurangkan risiko. Jadi, kalau kita tengok graf, ini adalah average annual standard deviation is a measure of risk. A measure of risk. And this one is the number of stocks in a portfolio. So, lagi ke kiri, lagi bertambahlah dia punya number of stocks. Yang sini pula lagi tinggi, maksudnya lagi berisikolah stok tersebut. So, bila dia hold hanya satu stok saja, risiko dia sangat tinggi. Dan apabila dia memegang lebih banyak stok, risiko kalau yang biru ini merujuk kepada unsystematic risk. Dia adalah firm specific. Hanya melibatkan setengah-setengah firma. Firm specific. Manakala yang hijau ini pula adalah market. Market specific macam inflation, war dan sebagainya, yang mana dia tak boleh nak dihilangkan menerusi diversification. Sebab tu dia punya line straight je sampai ke hujung ni. Tetapi firm specific risk lagi banyak dia pegang aset dalam satu-satu portfolio, lagi menurun dia punya risiko tersebut, sehinggalah apabila dia cukup banyak, dia menghampiri kosong. Ya, menyebabkan portfolio itu hanya holding systematic risk sahaja. Ya. Okay, so itu part 1 of chapter 6.